Margaret Hale came through the front door smiling like she'd won the lottery. "Ryan, your mother is finally going to see the world." From the living room, my husband didn't look up from his game. "Where are you going?" His thumbs kept moving. A second later his phone announced a loss, and Ryan swore at the strangers on his team as if they'd personally ruined his life. I woke in the bedroom with my heart slamming against my ribs. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. The ceiling was familiar. The beige curtains were familiar. So was the cheap framed print Margaret had insisted we hang because it made the room look expensive. I ran both hands over my body. No blood. No broken ribs. No cold floor under my cheek. No staircase above me. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. Founders. Week. The same morning. The exact day Margaret had signed up for the trip. My hands began to shake. In my first life, Margaret had found an absurdly cheap 7-day overseas tour to Solmara for $29. I had begged her not to go. When she refused to listen, I secretly canceled the booking and paid for a $1,200 premium coastal tour instead. She spent the entire vacation angry with me. Then one of her friends sent her a set of heavily edited photos, pretending she was having the time of her life overseas. Margaret came home convinced I had robbed her of some grand, glamorous adventure because I was jealous. At the top of our stairs, she screamed that I wanted to keep her small. Then she shoved me. I still remembered the sound my body made when it hit the landing. Ryan came home while I was still alive. He didn't call an ambulance. He wiped the handrail, moved the things Margaret had knocked over, told his mother to stop crying and think. Then he told the dispatcher, much later, that I'd slipped. I never made it to the hospital. Now I was standing in the same bedroom, alive again, listening to Margaret brag about the same $29 trip. Something inside me went very still. Last time, I had saved her from her own decision and paid for it with my life. This time, I wouldn't. I washed my face, walked into the living room, and sat down across from them. I heard something about Solmara. I said, "How much is the tour?" Money got Ryan's attention faster than anything else. He finally looked up. "Yeah, Mom. International travel isn't cheap. If you've got that kind of cash, you could help me upgrade my gaming setup." Margaret waved him off, delighted. That's the best part. Diane found a special package. 7 days. $29. Ryan's eyebrows moved. 29? Exactly. Her son works for an international travel company. He's some kind of regional director. These are internal promotional spots. She only got me in because we've known each other for years. Then Margaret leaned back with the smug satisfaction of someone who believed she'd outsmarted the entire travel industry. "I told you. Your mother knows how to find a deal. And people say the air in Solmara is incredible. Clean. Fresh. Nothing like here." I almost laughed. The last time I'd heard that sentence, I'd spent an hour trying to explain hidden fees, fraudulent operators, and trafficking scams. Margaret had called me bitter. Ryan cleared his throat. $29 is suspiciously cheap. Then he looked at me. Not Margaret. Me. The message in his face was obvious. "You stop her." Of course. Ryan got to be the worried son. I was supposed to be the difficult daughter-in-law who ruined his mother's fun. That had been our marriage in one glance. I ignored him and smiled at Margaret. "Honestly, that's amazing. You've wanted to travel overseas forever." Margaret's face lit up. "I have. I've never been overseas either," I added lightly. Her smile disappeared. "What do you need to go overseas for? You have a household. You have a job. Somebody has to be responsible around here." There it was. Margaret had always had a talent for describing my financial support of two able-bodied adults as if it were a feminine virtue. I kept my expression pleasant. "Ryan's been worried about you going alone. Maybe he should go with you." His head snapped toward me. "What? You said it yourself. The price seems strange. If you're concerned, go with her." Margaret seized the idea immediately. "That's perfect. You haven't been working lately. You need a break." Ryan frowned. "Mom, if it's a scam, from Diane? Don't be ridiculous. Her son runs the whole thing. He didn't run anything. In my first life, I'd looked into the operation. Diane's son had registered a shell travel company, then funneled people into predatory tour networks. I had shown Margaret screenshots, registration records, complaints. She had accused me of fabricating them. Now, when the skepticism came from her son, she patted his arm. Sweetheart, I've lived a long time. You think some scammer is going to fool me? The tenderness in her voice would have been funny if I hadn't spent years watching her reserve it for Ryan. Their relationship had never had normal boundaries. A few weeks after our wedding, Margaret used the emergency key after midnight because she'd had a bad dream, walked straight into our bedroom, and climbed onto the bed beside Ryan as if I weren't there. More than once, she had entered the bathroom while he was showering to bring him towels, fuss over him, even scrub his back while insisting, "I'm his mother. Don't make it weird." When I told Ryan an adult marriage needed privacy, he shrugged. When Margaret heard I'd objected, she told half her social circle that I was trying to turn her only son against her. That was how it always worked. Any boundary I set became evidence that I was cruel. Margaret raised her phone. "I'll message Diane right now and have her hold another spot." She typed quickly, then grinned at her son. "Just you and me. It'll be our little adventure." When she disappeared down the hallway, Ryan's face changed. "What is wrong with you?" I blinked. "What?" "I was trying to get you to talk her out of it." "You didn't say that." "You knew what I meant." "Did I?" His jaw tightened. $29 for a 7-day international trip. Evelyn. Use your head. Interesting. In my first life, when I had used my head, he'd told me to stop controlling his mother. I lowered my gaze and softened my voice. "Margaret already thinks I judge her. If I tell her not to go, she'll just think I'm trying to ruin it for her. Besides, companies do giveaways all the time." "Not like this." "Maybe Diane's son got some promotional inventory." Ryan hesitated. I let the silence sit for a moment, then added the bait I knew would work. "And Solmara is supposed to be beautiful. Everything is inexpensive once you're there. You'd probably feel rich." He looked at me. I almost smiled. "Plus," I continued, "you still clean up pretty well when you try. Foreign vacation, resorts, tourists from everywhere. I might have to worry about women flirting with you." Ryan's mouth curved despite himself. Vanity had always been his easiest door. "That's not exactly unlikely." I bit the inside of my cheek. He hadn't shaved in 4 days. His t-shirt had a grease mark near the collar. Months of sitting at home gaming had softened his jaw and thickened his waist. But Ryan had once been handsome, and apparently that memory paid interest in his own mind. He leaned back. "Fine. Mom shouldn't go alone. I'll go." Then, as if granting me a favor, he added, "Transfer me $700 before we leave. I'm not going overseas with no spending money." I almost admired the confidence. Ryan hadn't held a stable job in years. My parents had paid most of the down payment on our home as a wedding gift. They had given us my car. After I miscarried and couldn't work for a while, they had quietly covered groceries and utilities while Ryan stayed home figuring out his next move. His next move lasted years. At the beginning of our relationship, he had been charming, attentive, funny. Then I got pregnant. Only later did I realize the pregnancy hadn't been the accident he claimed. He had interfered with contraception because he thought a baby would make me commit to him. I married him anyway. I was younger then, more frightened of disappointing people, more willing to call pressure love. My parents tried to protect me with money, a larger down payment, better furniture, a reliable car. They thought if I entered the marriage with enough, Ryan would treat me well. A few months later, I lost the baby after a fall at home. Margaret said it had been an accident. I believed her. After that, I never carried another pregnancy. Ryan's eyes narrowed when he realized I was quiet. "What?" I leaned against his shoulder and made my voice sweet. "Ask Margaret to get me a spot too. I've never been out of the country." He pulled away immediately. "Why?" "Because I'd like to see things too." He scoffed. "You don't need to run around chasing experiences. Somebody has to keep earning money." There was no point arguing with a man who considered his unemployment a career strategy. He stood and walked toward the bedroom. Just make sure the transfer is done before we leave. I watched him go. Then I remembered something. Years earlier, after Margaret's husband died in an industrial accident, she had received a settlement and life insurance proceeds. The whole family had become obsessive about coverage after that. Ryan and I both carried substantial policies. I was the named beneficiary on his. The thought came quietly. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't make a plan to hurt him. I simply understood, with cold clarity, that I had no reason to rush into divorce before he left. I had already died once trying to save these people from themselves. I would not spend my second life doing it again. Margaret came out of her room holding a list. Evelyn, Diane sent me everything we'll need. Order it today. She handed me her phone as if I were staff. I scanned the list. Travel adapter, power bank, new luggage, lightweight clothing, toiletries, a neck pillow, a small medical kit. Sure, and don't buy cheap junk. That almost made me laugh. I ordered good quality versions, using Ryan's card after he texted me the number and told me to handle mom's stuff. If Margaret wanted to spend the next week telling everyone what a devoted son she'd raised, he could finance the performance. I also ordered a compact travel camera. Not a hidden camera. A perfectly ordinary wearable device sold for travel vlogging, with automatic cloud backup. When it arrived, I showed it to Ryan. You should wear this. You keep talking about posting travel videos. It clips onto the pendant chain you always use. And I already set up the shared cloud folder so you won't lose footage. He loved the idea. Of course he did. Good thinking. I almost laughed at the irony. Because I configured it from our shared household account. The uploads would remain accessible to me whenever the camera connected to a network. If something happened, there would be a record. If nothing happened, Ryan would simply come home with hours of bad travel footage. Either way, I wasn't breaking into anyone's device or secretly recording private spaces. He knew the camera existed. He chose to wear it. For the first time in years, I made a decision with myself in mind. While Margaret and Ryan planned their bargain overseas adventure, I booked a private domestic tour for 3. My mother had spent years saying she wanted to see the sunrise color ceremony at Grand Civic Plaza in Alderwin. She always said it casually, as if it were too indulgent to be a real wish. I booked it. Then I booked good hotels, comfortable transportation, and tickets to places my parents had only seen in documentaries. For 3 people, not 5. That evening, Ryan shouted from the bedroom, "Evelyn, is dinner happening tonight?" Margaret's laughter floated from her room, where she was on a group video call telling her friends how glamorous Solmara would be. "I'll take care of it," I called. Then I ordered prepared meals from a grocery kitchen, heated them, and set the table. Ryan came out as I picked up my purse. "Where are you going?" "Work emergency." Margaret frowned. "Tonight? If you go to work, who's cleaning this kitchen?" My manager said overtime pays triple during the holiday period. "I can stay if you'd rather." Ryan's head came up. "Triple? That's what they said." He pointed at the door. "Then why are you still standing here?" I smiled. "Good point." Outside, I went to a restaurant by myself. It sounds small. It wasn't. Since my marriage, I had cooked almost every dinner. I would come home from work, make fresh food, clean the kitchen, then eat whatever was left after Ryan and Margaret finished. Sitting alone at a table while someone else brought me hot food felt almost indecent. I ate slowly. Afterward, I went shopping for my parents. Tripp and stored the luggage at my office so no one at home would see it. When I returned, dirty plates still covered the table. In my first life, I would have washed them. This time, I scraped the food into the trash, put the plates in a bin for Ryan to deal with, and moved my laptop and a small bag into the home office. "I'll be working late all week," I told him. He grunted. That was all. The days before departure passed in a blur of Margaret boasting and Ryan preening. They told neighbors they were headed to Solmara. They promised souvenirs. They posed with their new luggage. Margaret even filmed a video in the building courtyard announcing that some people are born to stay home, and some people are brave enough to see the world. Linda Mercer, our neighbor, heard about the trip and stopped Margaret near the mailboxes. Linda was a retired teacher in her 60s, quiet and careful with people. "I'd double-check the operator before you go," she said gently. "There have been warnings about fraudulent low-cost tours through that region." Margaret's face hardened. "What's wrong with Solmara?" "Nothing. I'm talking about the tour company. You're jealous." Linda blinked. Margaret crossed her arms. "You've been competing with me since you moved in. Just because you went to college and taught school doesn't make you smarter than everyone. My son is taking me overseas. Yours barely calls. Margaret, and maybe if you weren't so difficult, your husband wouldn't have left you." The courtyard went silent. Linda's marriage had ended painfully years earlier. Everyone knew it. No decent person used it as a weapon. Her face drained of color. She swayed. "I was already moving before she hit the bench." Someone called for medical help. At the clinic, the doctor said stress had caused a fainting episode and a dangerous blood pressure spike. But there was no lasting injury. She needed rest and follow-up. I brought fruit the next afternoon. "I'm sorry," I told her. Linda gave me a tired smile. "You didn't say those things. She's part of my family." "No," Linda said. "She's part of your husband's family. That isn't the same thing as being responsible for her behavior." I looked down. She studied me for a moment. "You're leaving him, aren't you?" I looked up sharply. Linda's smile was faint. "I was a teacher for 35 years. I know what it looks like when someone has finally stopped asking permission." My throat tightened. "Yes. Good." That was all she said. After Linda fainted, no one else tried to warn Margaret. She took the silence as proof she'd won. On departure morning, she wore oversized sunglasses and a white travel coat even though the weather was warm. Ryan wore the camera clipped openly to his chain, his phone in one hand, and his luggage in the other. "Drive us to the airport," he said. "I have work." He stared at me. "Seriously? Holiday coverage?" Margaret rolled her eyes. "Always working. That's why you have no personality." I smiled. "Have a safe trip." For one strange second, Ryan looked at me as if he expected more. A lecture. A warning. An argument. He got none. The rideshare pulled away from the curb. I stood there until the car disappeared. Then I went to my office, picked up the luggage I'd hidden there, and drove to my parents' house. My mother opened the door and froze. "Evelyn?" I hugged her. The moment her arms closed around me, I started crying. My father appeared from the kitchen, saw my face, and immediately reached for his jacket. "What did Ryan do?" "Dad, stop. I'm going over there. He's not home." My father paused. I wiped my eyes. "Nothing happened today. I just missed you." He studied me for bruises anyway. When he found none, his shoulders lowered. My mother pulled me inside. "Sit down. I'll make tea." My father grabbed his wallet. "I'll get groceries. We'll make her favorite dinner." "Don't," I said. Both of them looked at me. "We're eating at the airport." My mother stared. "The airport? Pack for a week." My father's eyes narrowed. "Evelyn." I smiled through the last of my tears. "Mom, you said you wanted to see the sunrise ceremony at Grand Civic Plaza. We're going to Alderwin." For a second, neither of them spoke. Then my mother covered her mouth. My father recovered first. "Does Ryan know?" "No." "And Margaret?" "No." His expression tightened. I took a breath. "I don't want to live with them anymore." There. The sentence I'd swallowed for years. My mother sat beside me so quickly the cushion bounced. "Then don't." My father nodded once. "Come home." It was that simple. No lecture about what people would say. No warning about being too old to start over. No question about whether I had tried hard enough. Come home. My mother began to cry. Then she stood and wiped her face with both hands. "Why are we sitting here? Robert, get the suitcases." My father laughed for the first time that day. At the airport, While we waited to board, I checked the family social feed. Margaret had posted a selfie with Ryan. Sundara, here we come. I looked at their smiling faces for several seconds. Then the boarding announcement sounded. I put my phone away and followed my parents onto the plane. For once, I wasn't running behind Margaret and Ryan trying to stop them from making a mistake. I was walking towards something of my own. Alderwin was everything my mother had imagined. We landed before dawn, checked into the hotel, slept for a few hours, and spent the next several days seeing the city at an easy pace. My mother took photographs of everything. My father pretended he hated posing, then asked to see every picture twice. The first morning, we stood in Grand Civic Plaza with hundreds of other visitors while the sunrise ceremony began. My mother cried. Not loudly. She just reached for my hand and held on. I had bought that moment with money I earned myself. No one complained that I was wasting it on my parents. No one checked my bag when I left home. No one asked what I had given them. I thought freedom would arrive like thunder. Instead, it felt like my mother's warm hand around mine before sunrise. Ryan and Margaret did not call me. They posted constantly. Day 1, airport-style selfies. Day 2, captions about how wonderful Solmara was. Day 3, Margaret bragging about how everyone back home had been wrong. There was only one problem. They weren't in Solmara. The travel camera made that clear. The first uploads hit our shared cloud folder several hours after we left home. I opened them in the hotel while my parents were napping. Ryan and Margaret had never gone to an airport. The tour operator loaded them and 11 other travelers onto an old bus at a parking lot outside the city. At first, the staff acted cheerful. They passed out bottled water. They joked about VIP processing. They told everyone the first leg of the route would be by road because of a last-minute flight change. Then the bus left the highway. The tone changed. A man at the front stood and announced an additional fee of $700 per person. Margaret shot to her feet. What fee? Local processing and border services. Diane said $29 covered the whole trip. The man shrugged. Then called Diane. Margaret did. No answer. Her voice sharpened. This is fraud. The camera tilted when Ryan shifted in his seat. His voice came through clearly. Mom, sit down. No. I'm not giving them another cent. A second staff member moved into the aisle. Everyone pays. Margaret pointed toward the window. We're in the middle of nowhere. This isn't Solmara. Pay, or get off. Her laugh was short and disbelieving. Fine. Turn the bus around. The man stepped closer. That's not what I said. Even through a screen, I felt the temperature change. Other passengers began pulling out wallets. Margaret kept arguing. The image jolted. There was a sharp sound. Then Ryan's camera pointed at the floor. Mom. When the picture steadied, Margaret was on one knee beside the seat, one hand against her cheek. No one on the bus moved. The staff member crouched near her. I'm only explaining this once. You can pay, or you can stay here. There are no towns for miles. Ryan paid first. I watched him tap his card against a portable terminal, his hands suddenly much faster than his mouth. Margaret resisted until one of the men looked her up and down and said, There are other ways to settle a debt. She stopped arguing. She paid. I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, cold all over. I could have called them, could have shouted through the phone that this was the moment to turn around. But I had already learned what warnings were worth to people determined not to hear them. More importantly, I wasn't going to play amateur rescuer from hundreds of miles away. I downloaded the footage and sent it to the National Travel Fraud Reporting Center and the Foreign Assistance Emergency Desk. I included the operator name, booking confirmation, the phone numbers I had, and Ryan's shared location data. A case number arrived within hours. The response was cautious. Preserve all records. Do not confront suspected traffickers directly, and if anyone demanded money, contact law enforcement before sending funds. So I preserved everything. That night, the camera lost service. When it reconnected the next morning, Ryan was somewhere I didn't recognize. The architecture was different. The language on signs was different. The location metadata from his phone placed him in Vereen, a neighboring country several hundred miles from the Solmarin resorts they had advertised. They had crossed a border overnight. Later footage showed what looked like a small hotel complex surrounded by high walls. And yet Ryan and Margaret acted as if they'd arrived at a luxury retreat. That was the strangest part. The people running the place understood exactly what their guests wanted. Ryan wanted attention from young women. Margaret wanted to feel admired. They were given both. When Ryan entered the lobby, 3 women greeted him with practiced smiles. One looped an arm through his. Another fed him a grape from a fruit plate while he laughed into the camera. He posted clips almost immediately. Best vacation of my life. Men back home are missing out. Should have come here years ago. Our mutual friends filled the comments. Looks like somebody's having fun. Your wife okay with that? When are you bringing the boys next time? Ryan replied to one of them. Evelyn? Please. She isn't leaving me. Where would she go? She can't even have kids. Women here actually know how to treat a man. I read it twice. Then I saved a screenshot. Not because I needed proof that my marriage was dead. That part had been obvious for a long time. I saved it because Ryan had spent years telling me that the cruelty in his voice was something I imagined. The miscarriage had damaged my health. I lived with recurring pelvic pain afterward because I had been put back to work at home almost immediately, with inadequate rest and poor follow-up care. Years later, when we finally underwent fertility testing, the specialist told us Ryan had severe male factor infertility. Natural conception would be unlikely. Assisted reproduction might be necessary. He refused to accept the report. He called the clinic incompetent. Then he continued telling people I was the reason we had no children. Now he was announcing it in public. My anger lasted less time than I expected. Maybe because I was sitting in a hotel room in Alderwin with my parents laughing in the room next door. Ryan's opinion of me had once felt like a verdict. Now it looked more like graffiti on a wall I was already leaving behind. Margaret, meanwhile, was living inside her own fantasy. She had wanted to be famous for as long as I'd known her. According to family stories, she had been strikingly beautiful when she was young. People told her she looked like an actress. For years, she took that as evidence that some glamorous destiny had been stolen from her. She once auditioned for a film and was eliminated immediately. For the next decade, she insisted she would have been cast if her family had known the right people. After her husband died and she received a settlement and insurance money, she didn't have to work much. She spent on clothes, cosmetics, and eventually social media equipment. Short-form video gave her old dream a second life. She was nearly 50 but looked younger and knew how to photograph herself. She built a modest following, enough to make her believe viral fame was always one post away. Vereen gave her exactly the kind of attention she'd always wanted. Men asked for pictures. Hotel staff flattered her. People called her beautiful. The camera caught her laughing among strangers while Ryan filmed. On her social page, she wrote, "People here are so warm. Some of you back home could learn something." At first, followers congratulated her. Then someone noticed her geotag. "That's not Solmara." Another person wrote, "Margaret, you're in Vereen. There have been trafficking warnings around low-cost tour scams there. Please contact your consular emergency line." Others posted screenshots of government notices. One woman told her to get to a legitimate hotel and call police. Margaret responded to every warning as if it were a personal insult. "You're just jealous. Stop spreading fear because you've never traveled. People see a confident woman living well and can't stand it." Then she picked a fight with a younger creator named Maya Reed. Maya had written only one thing: "Please don't dismiss the location warnings. Even if you're safe, other travelers may copy you." Margaret mocked her appearance, called her desperate for attention, and implied she made money by sleeping with men online. Some of Margaret's followers took the cue and swarmed Maya's page with sexual rumors. That part, at least, ended differently than Margaret expected. Maya preserved every comment, identified several of the people behind them, sent formal cease and desist notices through council, and filed platform reports backed by the evidence. Within days, Margaret's loudest supporters were deleting posts and publishing apologies. Maya never argued with them. She simply posted, "Keep records. People are much braver when they think words have no consequences. After that, warnings disappeared from Margaret's comments section. Not because anyone suddenly believed she was safe. People had simply decided to let her make her own choices. By the time my parents and I returned from Alderwin, I had already made mine. I resigned from my job. It wasn't a dramatic exit. I gave notice, documented my projects, transferred my responsibilities, and left on professional terms. The job itself wasn't terrible. I had simply taken it because it fit around Ryan and Margaret. Short commute, predictable hours, easy to leave early if Margaret needed something, easy to work extra shifts when Ryan didn't earn. Before I married, I had wanted a different career entirely. I wanted strategy work, client projects, bigger problems, better training. I had once made it through the first interview at Northline Strategy Group, one of the strongest firms in the region. Then I discovered I was pregnant. I withdrew. I told myself there would be another chance. Years passed. Now, for the first time, I applied again. I also rented a small apartment under my own name and moved my personal belongings out of the marital home while Ryan was away. I did not empty joint accounts. I did not hide marital property. I did not forge anything or transfer assets to my parents. I took what was mine, photographed what remained, saved copies of the financial records, and scheduled a consultation with a family law attorney. I had spent one life being accused of selfishness whenever I protected myself. This time, I wanted every boundary clean. The lawyer reviewed our finances and the property title. "Do you want to file now?" she asked. "Not yet." She looked at me over her glasses. "Any reason?" "He's overseas. There's an active travel fraud report, and I don't know when he's returning." That was true. It just wasn't the entire truth. I also knew I was the named beneficiary on his life insurance policy. The policy was years old, properly funded, and unrelated to the trip. I wasn't going to cause his death. I wasn't going to interfere with any rescue. But I also wasn't going to rush to sever a legal status simply to prove moral purity to people who had never protected me. My attorney nodded. "Then keep your documentation. If he comes back and you want to proceed, call me." A week after I moved, Ryan called after midnight. His name lit the screen. I stared at it until the fourth ring. Then I answered. "Evelyn, send me $28,000. His voice was low and fast. I sat up. "What?" "Send it to my account. Now." In the background, someone shouted. There was a dull impact. Ryan inhaled sharply. "Do it." I was fully awake. "Where are you?" "Just send the money." Another voice came closer, speaking English with a heavy accent. "Tell her." Ryan's breathing changed. "Evelyn, please. They need the money." I remembered the instructions from the emergency desk. Do not send funds to unknown accounts without law enforcement guidance. Who is they? Stop asking questions. For 1 second, the old Ryan came back. The one who believed volume could replace authority. Then his voice cracked. "Please." I muted the phone and used my second device to call the emergency case number I had been given. The officer on duty listened while I explained. "Do not transfer anything yet," she said. "Keep him on the line if you can. Save all messages. If they provide account details, send them to us." I unmuted. "Ryan, I don't have $28,000 available for an unknown transfer." "You do." "No, I don't. You always have money." That sentence told me everything about how he had seen our marriage. My money wasn't mine. It was simply money he had not spent yet. A man took the phone from him. "You want your husband alive?" I said nothing. 150,000. "We send account." Then the line ended. Seconds later, a message arrived from Ryan's number. A video. I watched only once. Ryan was on his knees, bruised and bleeding from the forehead. 2 men stood behind him. One held a stick. "Pay," someone said from behind the camera. Or next video worse. My stomach turned. No matter what Ryan had done to me, the footage was horrifying. But horror was not the same thing as permission to make a reckless payment to criminals. I forwarded the video, account details, and metadata to the case officer. I also sent copies to my attorney. The officer called back. Do not pay them directly. We're coordinating through the appropriate channels. What happens if I don't? A pause. I can't promise an outcome either way. Paying does not guarantee release. I already knew that. The next morning, the travel camera uploaded a few final clips. The images were chaotic. Ryan appeared to be inside an office full of desks and computers, being instructed to make calls from lists of names. I could not tell exactly what operation they were running, but it resembled the scam compounds described in official warnings. The camera later captured Margaret in a hallway arguing with Ryan. I am not doing that. His voice came low and urgent. Mom, if you don't cooperate, they're going to kill me. What about me? They like you. You can make money for them. I stopped the video. I didn't need to hear more. The next file showed Margaret crying outside what appeared to be a hotel room while a guard waited nearby. I submitted it too. Then the upload stopped completely. Maybe the camera was taken. Maybe it broke. Maybe there was no network. For the first time since their departure, I knew nothing. Days passed. No calls. No messages. No posts. Then a week. Then 2. I went to interviews. I studied at night. I visited my parents. I checked the case portal whenever there was an update. Most entries were maddeningly vague. Information forwarded. Local counterparts notified. Ongoing investigation. Ryan and Margaret had made terrible decisions. That did not mean I wanted to become the person deciding whether they lived or died. So I gave every piece of evidence I had to the people whose job it was to act. And I did not send money to criminals. About a month later, my phone rang while I was getting dressed for a final round interview. The number was unfamiliar. Is this Evelyn Brooks? Yes. This is Officer Nolan with the Foreign Citizen Assistance Unit. I'm calling regarding Ryan Hale. My hand tightened around the phone. Okay. I'm sorry to tell you this. Local authorities in Vereen recovered a body believed to be your husband. The room went silent around me. The officer continued gently. Identification was confirmed through his documents and biometric records. How did he die? The preliminary finding is an accidental fall into a ravine during the night. I sat down. Was he alone? According to the initial local report, there were no other individuals at the fall site. Investigators believe he left the compound area on foot. His belongings were found near a narrow service opening in an outer barrier. Footprints continued into rough terrain. I closed my eyes. So he had tried to escape. The officer explained that the local report placed his death several hours before searchers found him. There was evidence he had been running through unlit terrain. The path narrowed near a steep drop. No one could tell me what he had been thinking. No one needed to. I had seen enough of Ryan to know that when consequences finally became real, panic often arrived before judgment. What about Margaret? She's alive as far as the current investigation can confirm, but we have not secured her release. My throat tightened. Can you get her out? We're working with partner agencies. I can't give you a timeline. I thanked him. Then I sat in my apartment for a long time, staring at the wall. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel grief the way I once imagined a widow should. I felt something heavier and stranger. Ryan was dead. The man who had once held me while I cried after our baby died. The man who had also watched his mother control me, humiliate me, and eventually kill me in another life. The man who had helped cover up my death. The man who had called me worthless in public because I couldn't give him a child when his own medical record said otherwise. All those versions of him were gone at once. I called my parents. My mother came over immediately. My father sat beside me without speaking. After a while, I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Dad looked at me. Then don't force yourself to feel anything. That helped more than condolences would have. The insurance process took time. The carrier requested the death certificate, local investigative report, travel records, policy history, and additional statements because the death occurred overseas. I cooperated fully. The policy had been purchased years earlier. Premiums were current. I had not arranged the trip. I had not paid the operator. I had reported the suspected trafficking before Ryan died. I had turned over the ransom demands instead of hiding them. Eventually, the claim was approved. The proceeds were paid directly to me as the named beneficiary. A few days later, Northline Strategy Group called. I had the job. For the first time in years, the future in front of me contained something other than Ryan and Margaret. I thought that meant the story was over. I was wrong. 3 days after Ryan's death was formally confirmed, I walked into the headquarters of Reborn Strategy Group. Years earlier, fresh out of college, I had made it through the first interview there. Then I found out I was pregnant. Ryan wrapped both arms around me and called the baby a gift. Margaret, who had criticized nearly everything about me until then, suddenly became attentive. She brought me tea, asked whether I was tired, told me family mattered more than any job. I believed them. I withdrew from the interview process. I told myself I could build a career later. Then the baby was gone. The opportunity was gone. Little by little, so was the version of me who had believed her own life mattered. Standing outside Valoran years later, I saw my reflection in the glass facade. Tailored charcoal suit, hair tied back, laptop bag over one shoulder. No apron. No grocery sacks cutting into my fingers. No missed calls demanding dinner. No husband on a couch yelling because a video game had gone badly. I smiled at my own reflection. Ryan had spent years telling me that no one else would want me. He had been asking the wrong question. The question was whether I wanted myself back. I did. My direct manager was Dana Cole, a woman in her mid-40s with a calm voice and an intimidating ability to find the weak point in any proposal. On my first day, she reviewed my resume. There's a long gap from the work you were originally trained for. There had been a time when that question made me feel ashamed. Now I answered plainly. I got married and spent too much energy maintaining a life that wasn't good for me. Dana studied me. Then she nodded. Knowing when to return matters more than pretending you never left. My eyes stung unexpectedly. I looked down at my notebook. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. You're behind on some tools, and this place moves fast. She was right. The younger analysts hired around me knew newer software. They were quicker with automation. Some had spent the years I'd lost building portfolios, certifications, and professional networks. My first major proposal came back covered in comments. Read everywhere. Clarify. Unsupported. Too broad. Where is the client evidence? Rebuild this section. 5 years earlier, I would have taken it as proof that I didn't belong. But I had already died once. A marked-up slide deck wasn't going to finish me. I stayed late, rebuilt the analysis, checked every claim, and resubmitted it the next morning. Dana looked at the timestamp. How much did you sleep? 3 hours. Don't make that a habit. I won't. She waited. I smiled. I've owed myself a lot of effort for a long time. I got carried away. For the first time, her stern expression softened. Evelyn, you don't have to repay your entire life in one night. I remembered that sentence. 3 months later, I led my first small client engagement. 6 months later, my team helped secure one of the firm's priority accounts for the year. When the performance bonus hit my account, I didn't buy jewelry. I took my parents to see a condominium 2 streets from their old place. It had 3 bedrooms, an elevator, wide doors, and a balcony large enough for my mother's plants and my father's morning coffee. Mom walked outside and immediately began planning where she'd put herbs. Dad looked at the price sheet. No. I laughed. You haven't even seen the kitchen. I've seen the number. You can afford to live here comfortably. We already have a home. This building has an elevator. No stairs when your knees get worse. My knees are fine. Mom made a noise. Your knees complain louder than you do. Dad ignored her. And you're not buying us a condo after being back at work for half a year. I want to. He folded the brochure. Keep your money. I hesitated. I have enough. He went quiet. All 3 of us knew what I meant. The insurance proceeds. Dad looked toward the balcony. Don't build your life around that money. Why not? Because of where it came from. I understood. To him, money tied to Ryan's death felt contaminated. I didn't see it that way. The money isn't cursed, Dad. The relationship was. He looked at me. Ryan spent my income while he was alive. He lived in a home my parents helped us buy. He used my car. He expected my work to support him. The insurance policy was a contract we both agreed to years ago. He died. The insurer investigated, and they paid the named beneficiary. My father said nothing. I won't worship that money because it came after a death. And I won't be afraid of it either. I'm going to use part of it for housing, education, travel. For you and Mom. For the life I kept postponing. My voice tightened. Ryan took enough from my life while he was alive. I refused to let the last financial thing connected to him become another cage. Dad turned away. For a second, I thought he was angry. Then I saw him wipe his eyes. Do whatever you're going to do. Mom smiled behind him. That was as close to permission as he ever gave. I bought the condo. My mother treated the renovation like a national infrastructure project. She visited almost every day. Sofa here. Dining table there. No, the lamp couldn't go there because the afternoon sun would hit the screen. My father complained that I spent too much, then showed up before the furniture delivery with cleaning cloths and a toolbox. For the first time in years, ordinary family life did not feel like something I had to steal. We ate together every week. On some weekends, I drove them out to the countryside. During the winter holiday, they no longer sat alone beside a table set for three while Ryan insisted every major celebration had to revolve around Margaret because she was alone. Mom made holiday cookies. Dad rolled the dough badly. I ate the finished ones. Mom slapped my shoulder. Are you planning to help? When I was little, you said all you wanted was for me to come home. Her hands stopped. Her eyes turned red. Then she smacked me again. Don't say things like that when I'm trying not to cry. I hugged her from behind. This time, I had come home in every sense of the word. 4 months. There was no news about Margaret. Her social account went silent. So did the family feed she once updated 10 times a day. Margaret had posted coffee, new lipstick, a grocery run, a sunny window, anything that could become proof she was living an interesting life. Then nothing. People in the old building began asking questions. By then, Ryan's death was public among friends and neighbors. I never announced the details, but the fact that he had died overseas spread quickly. Some people called it tragic. Some called it strange. Most remembered how loudly Margaret had mocked everyone who warned her. Linda never said I told you so. When I visited her, she was watering plants on her balcony. She listened quietly while I told her Ryan was dead and Margaret was still missing. Then she sighed. Pride is dangerous when it convinces you that every warning is an insult. I nodded. I'm sorry about what Margaret said to you before she left. Linda put down the watering can. Why are you apologizing? Because she was my mother-in-law. She was herself. You are yourself. I looked at her. She reached for a leaf and turned it toward the sun. I always thought you were too good at enduring things. Evelyn. I almost laughed. That doesn't sound like a compliment anymore. It isn't. Kindness is good. But kindness needs teeth. Otherwise people start calling your lack of boundaries a virtue. I carried that sentence with me for a long time. 8 months after Margaret disappeared, I received another official call. Ms. Brooks, is Margaret Hale your mother-in-law? I almost corrected the tense of the relationship. Instead, I said, yes. She has been recovered alive. My fingers went cold around the phone. The officer explained that a multi-agency operation had removed a group of trafficking victims from several sites in Vereen. Margaret was among them. She was severely malnourished, physically injured, and psychologically unstable. Because Ryan was dead and Margaret had no other immediate family on file, officials had reached out to me as the nearest known relative. You are not legally required to assume care, the officer added. But we need help confirming some family information and property records if you're willing. That distinction mattered. Not legally required. Not morally conscripted. Not automatically responsible because I had once married her son. I'll come in. Before the appointment, The caseworker sent me an updated investigative summary compiled from survivor interviews, seized records, and the site inspection. That was how I finally learned what happened after Ryan's camera stopped uploading. He had been forced to work in a scam office, making calls from prepared scripts. His numbers were poor. According to other survivors, guards beat him regularly and cut his food when he missed targets. Margaret had been forced into commercial sexual exploitation at nearby hotels. The captors used Ryan as leverage against her. Several survivors said Ryan, terrified for his own life, had pressured his mother to cooperate because her earnings were keeping both of them useful to the group. Near the end, Ryan apparently overheard guards discussing the transfer or disposal of workers who were no longer profitable. He had already noticed a narrow maintenance opening near the outer wall. Months of poor food had made him thin enough to squeeze through it. During a late-night guard change, he tried. His bag snagged in the opening. He abandoned it, got through, and ran into the hills without a map or a phone he could safely use. Searchers followed his tracks the next day. By then, he was already dead at the bottom of the ravine. Reading it did not make me feel triumphant. It made the entire thing feel smaller, uglier, and more final. Some endings needed to be faced directly. The woman sitting in the Victim Services Center barely looked like Margaret. Before the trip, she had built her identity around appearing younger than she was. She never left home without makeup. She wore fitted coats to take out the trash. She could turn buying eggs into a photo shoot. Now her hair was dry and uneven. Her cheeks had hollowed. Deep shadows surrounded her eyes. Scars crossed the backs of her hands. She wore plain clothing provided by the recovery team and looked 20 years older. When she saw me, her eyes changed instantly. Evelyn. She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Thank God. Take me home. I stayed near the door. She hurried toward me and reached for my hand. I stepped back. Her fingers closed on empty air. The hope on her face hardened. What are you doing? The tone was so familiar that for one strange second, we were back in the old house. Margaret giving an order. Me expected to obey. I pulled out a chair. I'm here to help complete the paperwork they asked for. After that, I'm leaving. Her mouth opened. Leaving? Yes. Where are you going? Home. What about me? You have caseworkers here. They'll help you arrange housing and medical follow-up. She stared. I'm your mother-in-law. Ryan is dead. Exactly. Her voice rose. My son is dead. Who else is supposed to take care of me? There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not what happened to our family. Who will take care of me? Her face crumpled before I could answer. My Ryan. My baby. They killed him. She covered her mouth and cried. Then, almost in the same breath, she looked at me. Why didn't you pay them? I felt something inside me close. If you'd sent the money, he might be alive. The old pattern had survived everything. If Margaret lost money, someone had tricked her because they envied her. If a friendship ended, the other person was jealous. If Ryan failed, a boss had been unfair. If I was hurt, I had been too sensitive. And now, after choosing the trip, ignoring warnings, paying extortion fees, crossing an illegal border, and staying after discovering they were not where they had been promised, she had found a way to place Ryan's death in my hands. I opened my folder. I brought copies of the relevant reports because I thought this might come up. Margaret blinked. I placed them on the table between us. Ryan was an adult. He voluntarily joined the trip. When I discovered evidence of fraud, I reported it to the Travel Fraud Center and Foreign Assistance Authorities. When criminals demanded money, I followed law enforcement instructions and did not wire funds to an unknown account. She stared at the papers. The death investigation concluded that Ryan left the compound on foot and died in an accidental fall. If you believe I caused his death, you can speak to an attorney. Her mouth tightened. You think I won't? You're free to. She slapped a palm on the table. Evelyn. Don't talk to me like I'm a stranger. You are a stranger to the life I have now. Her face flushed. If my son hadn't married you, you'd still be alone. Who would have wanted you? The insult landed like a paper ball. Once, It would have cut me open. Now it only sounded old. My parents paid most of the down payment on the house Ryan lived in. Margaret's jaw worked. They paid for the renovations too. The car was mine before the wedding. I covered most of our living expenses. Ryan had no stable income for years. Marriage means it was all shared. Some assets were marital. Some were not. The estate and jointly titled property have already been handled according to the law and the title documents. Her eyes shifted. I knew that look. She had remembered something. The life insurance. I said nothing. Ryan had a policy. I waited. Did it pay? Yes. The grief on her face changed with astonishing speed. How much? That's private. Her hand came out. Give me my share. I almost smiled. Your share? My son died. That money came from his life. The policy named me as beneficiary. I'm his mother. That doesn't change the contract. I gave birth to him, and he chose a beneficiary when he signed the policy. Margaret's voice became shrill enough that a staff member looked over. At least half belongs to me. No. You're stealing from a grieving mother. If you believe you have a legal claim, file one. Her chair scraped backward. She lunged across the small space toward me. The staff member intervened immediately, catching her by the shoulders before she reached my face. Margaret fought against the hold. You wanted this. I stood. You knew that tour was dangerous. You knew. My gaze sharpened. I knew. She froze. Just for a second. Long enough to know she'd hurt herself. I stepped closer to the table, but not to her. Ryan himself said $29 for 7 days overseas sounded like a scam. You ignored him. The operator demanded hundreds more before you even crossed the border. You paid. You were taken somewhere different from the advertised destination. You kept posting about how wonderful it was. Her breathing turned ragged. Do you remember how many times I warned you about bad decisions before that trip? She looked away. Supplements with fake medical claims. The so-called spiritual advisor who wanted a loan. An investment group that promised impossible returns. Every time. I was the one who stopped you. You liked controlling me. No. I was cleaning up consequences before they reached you. She flinched. And every time I did it, you called me jealous. You told people I hated seeing you happy. The one time I stopped taking responsibility for your choices, you walked straight into the consequences and came back blaming me again. I shook my head. Margaret, the world is not organized around protecting you from yourself. Her face went white. You make a choice. You carry the result. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she sank to the floor. Her sobbing came hard and loud. My husband is dead. My son is dead. I have nobody. Once, that would have pulled me toward her. I would have crouched down, held her, promised something. Instead, I stood still. What happened to Margaret in Vereen was horrific. She had been exploited, assaulted, starved, and terrorized. I could acknowledge that without erasing what she had done to me. Being a victim did not rewrite a person's entire history into innocence. When the paperwork was complete, I picked up my bag. Margaret called my name. Evelyn. I stopped at the doorway. You really won't take me? I did not turn around. The victim services team will help you with temporary housing and follow-up care. You still own your condo, and records show you have savings. If you stop chasing schemes and fantasies, you can support yourself. I took one breath. As for me, this is the end of our relationship. Outside, sunlight hit my face. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment with my eyes closed. I had thought Ryan's death broke the final tie between me and the Hales. It hadn't. This did. 1 week later, Margaret returned to her old building. I heard what happened through Linda and the residents. Group chat I had never bothered leaving. Margaret told anyone who would listen that I had killed Ryan by refusing the ransom. She said I had stolen the insurance proceeds. She said she'd suffered overseas while I never once went to rescue her. This time, her audience did not cooperate. People remembered the departure. They remembered every warning she had mocked. They remembered Linda collapsing after Margaret publicly attacked her. One neighbor finally wrote, "Margaret, We all told you the deal looked wrong. Another wrote, Evelyn warned you about scams for years. A third said, Ryan wasn't working. Evelyn supported that household. Stop rewriting everything now. Margaret reacted badly. The friends who used to praise every photo stopped answering her calls. Diane Price, whose son had been connected to the original tour operation, was already under investigation. Through public case updates, Margaret finally learned that the executive job and internal promotional seats had been fabricated. The woman she trusted most had helped direct her toward the scheme that destroyed her life. Then Maya Reed, the younger creator Margaret had targeted online, saw one of Margaret's new videos. Maya did not insult her. She posted a single sentence on her own page. We are responsible for what we say, and we are responsible for the choices we make. The line spread. People dug up Margaret's old vacation posts. The air here is amazing. Everyone is so friendly. People back home are just jealous. Placed beside the rescue reports, the clips became unbearable even for Margaret. She tried live streaming again. The comments filled with one question. Still enjoying that fresh foreign air? After several attempts, she deleted the account. The fame she chased for most of her life ended not with a scandal big enough to make her famous, but with people laughing at the performance she had once been proudest of. Margaret came looking for me after that. The first time, she waited outside Valoran. Security called upstairs. I didn't go down. The second time, she appeared at my parents' building. Dad called the police and had her removed from the property. The third time, she changed tactics. No shouting. No public scene. She simply waited near the entrance of my building until I came home from work. By then, several months had passed since her rescue. She had gained some weight, but age had settled into her face in a way it never had before. When she saw me park, she stood slowly. Evelyn. I stopped several yards away. What do you need? She looked at the pavement. I sold my condo. I said nothing. Ryan's things were everywhere. His old jacket. His game system. Shoes by the closet. I couldn't sleep there. Her eyes lifted. They were red. Was I really that awful to you? If she had asked me that in my first life, I might have collapsed from relief. I had wanted acknowledgement almost as badly as I had wanted love. Now, I answered with one word. Yes. Margaret's mouth trembled. She had probably expected comfort, or nuance, or at least the old Evelyn, rushing in to soften the truth for her. Instead, she got the truth. I used to think you stole my son, she said. Ryan had always been mine. His father died when he was young. It was just the two of us. Then you showed up and I thought he started choosing you. I couldn't help it. When did Ryan ever choose me? Margaret stopped. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then something shifted in her face. She looked backward 3 years neither of us could change. Ryan telling her I was unreasonable. Ryan telling me she was old and lonely. Ryan refusing to confront either of us while benefiting from both. Ryan asking me to stop Margaret so he could remain the good son. Ryan telling Margaret whatever kept her cooking for him, praising him, or giving him money. She let out a broken little laugh. He didn't listen to either of us. Did he? No. Only himself. Most of the time, the silence stretched. Then Margaret said, very quietly, about the baby. My entire body went rigid. What about the baby? She stopped looking at me, and I knew, before she spoke, that whatever came next was going to hurt. Margaret rubbed her palms together as if she could warm them. Your miscarriage wasn't exactly an accident. The traffic noise around us seemed to disappear. What did you say? She swallowed. When you were pregnant, the doctor told you to rest more. I remember. I hated that you stopped doing as much around the house. My hands curled at my sides. Margaret kept staring at the ground. Ryan didn't really want a baby that early. He was worried about money. Then your parents said they were so excited they might help you two move into a bigger place after the baby came. I remembered that too. My mother had been looking at nurseries online. Dad had talked about school districts before I was even showing. Ryan had changed overnight when he heard there might be more financial help. Margaret's voice dropped. So he decided the baby was a good thing after all. A pulse beat hard behind my eyes. Keep talking. The day you fell, I asked you to move those storage boxes. You didn't ask. She flinched. I remembered the scene with terrible clarity. Margaret standing at the bottom of the basement steps. 3 heavy boxes stacked near the wall. Me telling her the doctor had said no lifting. Her telling me pregnant women weren't disabled. I had lifted one because I wanted the argument to end. Then another. On the 3rd trip, I lost my balance. Margaret whispered. I knew the boxes were too heavy. My breath stopped. I wanted to scare you. I thought if you stumbled, maybe you'd stop acting so delicate. Acting? I'm not saying that now. I'm telling you what I thought then. And when I fell, she began crying. I didn't think you'd fall that hard. Something in me broke open. For years, I had replayed that day. Maybe my grip had been wrong. Maybe I had moved too quickly. Maybe I should have refused. Maybe I had failed my baby. Doctors had told me miscarriages happened for many reasons. That not every loss could be prevented. That guilt would not help. I had still blamed myself. Now Margaret was standing in front of me, telling me she had knowingly pressured a medically restricted pregnant woman to carry heavy boxes because she resented the rest I needed. You knew what you were doing. I didn't mean for the baby to die. I stepped closer. You knew there was a risk. Her face crumpled. I was angry. So you made me lift them anyway. I said I'm sorry. The slap came before I consciously decided to move. My palm struck her cheek. The sound snapped through the parking courtyard. Margaret staggered half a step. I had never hit her before. Not in this life. Not in the life where she killed me. She put a hand to her face and did not strike back. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm sorry. My whole body was shaking. Did Ryan know? Margaret froze. That was answer enough. Did he know? Her lips pressed together. I heard myself laugh. It did not sound like laughter. My husband knew. Margaret whispered. I told him after. The baby's father knew you deliberately made me do something the doctor told me not to do. He was angry at first. At first? He said there was no point destroying the family over something that couldn't be changed. For a moment, I couldn't see clearly. That explained so much. Why Ryan had never demanded an explanation. Why he told me to stop crying after the miscarriage because we could try again. Why he let Margaret order me back into the kitchen while I was still bleeding. Why every later fertility argument ended with him calling me defective. He knew. He knew I had spent years blaming myself for something his mother had helped cause. And he let me. My eyes filled. I laughed again. Because if I didn't, I thought I might scream. I had died for these people once. Before that, I had almost erased my entire life for them. My career. My parents. My health. My confidence. Even the memory of my baby had been poisoned by guilt they knew I did not deserve. Margaret reached for my sleeve. Evelyn, I thought about it every day when I was trapped over there. I kept thinking if I'd listened to you, if I had treated you better. If I hadn't, I pulled my arm away. There is no if. She cried harder. I know I'm sorry too late. You're telling me now because Ryan is dead. She looked up. Because your friends are gone. Because nobody is waiting to take care of you. Because you finally know what it feels like to need mercy from someone you've hurt. That's not fair. I stared at her. Fair? She went silent. You want me to forgive you so you can tell yourself the past is settled. No. You want relief. My voice shook, but I kept going. That baby does not come back because you finally feel guilty. The years I spent in pain do not disappear. The career I gave up does not magically return. The woman I used to be does not get those years back. Margaret was crying openly now. I know. No. You know your consequences. That's not the same thing as knowing what you did to me. She covered her face. For one dangerous second, words from my other life rose to my tongue. You pushed me down a staircase. Ryan watched me die. I stopped myself. There were truths Margaret would never understand because they belonged to a life only I remembered. I took a breath. Your apology belongs to you. My forgiveness belongs to me. She lowered her hands. I can accept that you're admitting what you did. Hope flickered in her face. Then I finished. I do not forgive you. The hope vanished. Do not come to my work. Do not go to my parents. Do not wait outside my home. Evelyn, if you contact me again after I've told you to stop, I'll document it and use whatever legal remedies are available. That got through. She stepped back. I walked into my building without looking behind me. Later, I wrote down everything Margaret had told me while it was fresh in my memory and gave a copy to my attorney. The miscarriage was years old. The evidence was limited. I did not build my healing around the idea that a court could perfectly reconstruct what had happened. What mattered most was that I finally stopped carrying blame that had never belonged to me. Some time after that, I heard Margaret moved to another city. She had money left from selling her condo. For once, she did not put it into a miracle investment. She did not book another bargain trip. She did not try to become an influencer again. Linda heard through an old acquaintance that Margaret rented a small apartment near a senior services complex and worked part-time doing simple administrative tasks. Maybe she changed. Maybe she didn't. I stopped checking. I did not punish her. I did not rescue her. The day she finally left my life, she became what she should have been allowed to become a long time ago. Someone else's responsibility. 1 year after I joined Valoran, I was promoted. At the company celebration, Dana handed me sparkling water and leaned against the edge of a table. You've changed. I smiled. That sounds ominous. When you started, you worked like something was chasing you. I looked down at my glass. Maybe something was. And now? Dana thought for a moment. Now you look like you know where you're going. Outside the windows, the city was coming alive with evening lights. Her words stayed with me. For years, I had run because there was a wolf behind me. Now I moved because there was light ahead. I started doing things I had once dismissed as impractical. I signed up for dance classes. The first class nearly killed me. I was in my 30s, trying to learn basic positions beside people who had been dancing since childhood. My hips were stiff. My calves hurt. The mirror was unforgiving. I loved it. I took weekend trips alone. I sat in cafes in cities where nobody knew my name. I saw mountains covered in snow. I stood beside an ocean so wide it made my old problems feel physically smaller. I took a night train just because I had always wanted to know what it felt like to wake up somewhere new. I rebuilt friendships I had neglected during my marriage. At first, every invitation made me check the time automatically. Would Margaret expect dinner? Would Ryan be angry if I came home late? Then I would remember. No one was waiting to punish me. Freedom did not arrive once. It arrived 100 times. In the moment I bought concert tickets without asking. In the moment I ignored a phone call because I was busy. In the moment I said no and did not offer a paragraph of explanation. In the moment I learned that rest was not laziness. In the moment I looked in the mirror and stopped seeing a woman someone had rejected. My parents changed too. Or maybe I simply got to know them again. Dad still complained about money. Mom still worried about everything. They argued about thermostat settings, driving routes, and whether fruit counted as dessert. It was ridiculous. It was ordinary. It was everything I had almost lost. For their next anniversary, I booked them an overseas tour through a reputable operator. Not a bargain package. Not a mysterious internal spot. A fully documented itinerary through the fictional coastal countries of Valen and Ursane, with licensed guides, transparent pricing, travel insurance, and actual flights listed on the confirmation. When Mom heard the price, she slapped both hands against her legs. Cancel it. No. Evelyn, that is too much money. You've always wanted to travel overseas. I've changed my mind. Dad looked amused. Mom pointed at him. Don't laugh. Tell her to cancel it. He took the brochure. Hotels look nice. Robert. I laughed. What happened to seeing the world? Mom looked at me for a long moment. Then her expression softened. At my age, I've finally figured out what seeing the world is worth. I waited. She reached over and squeezed my hand. The best thing in the world is knowing the people you love are safe. Dad nodded solemnly. Your mother finally said something intelligent. Mom smacked his arm. He yelped. I laughed until my stomach hurt. We went on the trip anyway. On the first day, Mom tried to use a selfie stick. She managed to photograph the top halves of our foreheads. Dad took it away from her. Give me that. You don't know what you're doing. His first photo was the pavement. We argued with the device for 10 minutes before asking a stranger to help. The final picture was perfect. Dad on the left, Mom on the right, me between them. All three of us laughing so hard our smiles looked ridiculous. I made it my phone wallpaper. That night, back at the hotel, I dreamed of the staircase. The old house was exactly as I remembered. Margaret stood at the top. Ryan was beside her. At the bottom lay the woman I had been in my first life. Blood darkened the floor beneath her. Margaret reached toward me. Maybe she wanted to pull me closer. Maybe she wanted to push me again. It didn't matter. I stayed where I was. Then the woman on the floor opened her eyes. Me. The old me. The one who had spent years apologizing. The one who had died waiting for her husband to call an ambulance. She looked at me. There was no anger in her face. She smiled. So did I. Then the house cracked apart. The stairs disappeared. Ryan disappeared. Margaret disappeared. Only light remained. I woke just before sunrise. Mom was asleep in the other bed. Dad was already on the balcony with a cup of tea. He saw me and waved. Come look at this. I pulled on a robe and stepped outside. The sun was rising over a city I had never seen before. Buildings turned gold one window at a time. I thought about the morning I woke up in my old bedroom and realized I had been given another life. Back then, I thought the gift was revenge. I wanted Ryan to suffer. I wanted Margaret to pay. I wanted the universe to balance a ledger I had died holding. Standing on that balcony, I finally understood. A second life was not valuable because it gave me another chance to hate the people who hurt me. It was valuable because it gave me another chance to choose myself. If I spent every day watching for their downfall, then even after they were gone, they would still own my attention. That would not be freedom. Freedom was forgetting to think about them. Freedom was becoming too busy living to keep score. 2 years after Ryan's death, I was cleaning out an old phone when I found one last screenshot. It was his post from Vereen. Ryan smiling with 2 women beside him. Best life ever. In the comments, someone had asked whether he was worried his wife would see. His answer was still there. Evelyn won't leave me. I stared at it for a few seconds. That sentence had once been true. Not because I couldn't leave. Because I had forgotten that leaving was something I was allowed to do. A message prompt appeared when I selected the image. Delete permanently? I pressed yes. The screen went blank. I felt nothing dramatic. No rush. No final burst of anger. Just space. From the living room, Mom shouted, "Evelyn, hurry up. The photographer is here. Coming." I put down the phone. Dad had already changed into the new shirt I bought him. Mom wore a dark green dress and was standing in front of the mirror criticizing his posture. Pull your stomach in. I'm almost 70. Where is it supposed to go? It'll look better in the picture. He pointed at her reflection. Can you pull in wrinkles too? Robert Brooks. I walked into the room laughing. Both of you behave. The photographer arranged us on the couch. Mom took my left hand. Dad sat on my right. Just before the flash, I remembered the final moments of my first life. The cold floor. The staircase blurring above me. My breathing getting weaker. What hurt most then had not been the idea that Ryan and Margaret might escape consequences. It was everything I had not done. I had not spent enough time with my parents. I had not returned to the career I loved. I had not seen the places I wanted to see. I had not lived one full day without arranging myself around someone else's demands. Now those empty spaces were filling. 3, 2, 1. The flash went off. In the photograph, my parents were smiling. So was I. No Ryan. No Margaret. No house where I had to measure every word. Only the life I chose. Later, someone who knew part of the story asked me a question. If you could go back to the day Margaret booked that tour, knowing everything that happened, would you still let them go? I thought about it for a long time. Yes. Not because I believed anyone deserved what happened in Vereen. No one does. Not because danger was some cosmic punishment. It wasn't. But adults have a basic right to make their own choices. That right comes with responsibility. I had stopped Margaret once. I had investigated the company, argued, canceled her trip, paid for a safer one. I had taken ownership of a decision that was not mine. And in my first life, I died for it. The second time, I did something harder. I stopped confusing love with control. I reported crimes when I saw evidence of them. I preserved records. I contacted the proper authorities. I refused to fund criminals. I did not obstruct rescue efforts. But I also did not make myself responsible for preventing two adults from every bad choice they insisted on making. They chose. Consequences followed. And I chose too. I chose to leave a marriage that had reduced me to labor. I chose to return to work. I chose to use money instead of fear it. I chose my parents. I chose boundaries. I chose a life large enough that Ryan and Margaret eventually became a small, distant part of it. Sunlight poured through the windows of my condo one Monday morning, landing across the framed family portrait on the wall. I stood in front of it while fastening my watch. The day ahead was wonderfully ordinary. Valoran had a major client signing at 10. At 3, I was taking Mom to a hair appointment because she had decided she wanted something modern but not too modern. Dad had promised to cook dinner, which meant Mom and I would probably have to rescue dinner. On Saturday, the three of us planned to hike a trail outside the city. There were emails waiting, laundry to do, a dentist appointment I kept forgetting to schedule, a friend whose birthday gift I still needed to buy. Small things, good things, ordinary things. In my first life, I would have traded anything for one ordinary week that belonged to me. I picked up my bag and opened the front door. Sunlight filled the hallway. No one would ever push me down that staircase again. Not because I had become stronger than every person who might hurt me. Not because I had learned how to control the future. But because I had finally walked away from the staircase and toward a life that was mine.